job on making it to the halfway point. What we want to do is keep the momentum going. Let's push through and let's finish off those last couple of steps. So let's look at exactly what we're going to cover in this session. So this really does represent the turning point. In the first half of this course, we've covered the science of mixed martial arts. So now you should know about the metabolic demands of MMA. You should know how to target the specific energy systems that we talked about by manipulating work-to-rest ratios. You should know about overtraining and how to avoid it in the signs and symptoms. You should know about the theory of periodization as it relates to mixed martial arts, and you should know the importance of performance testing. What we want to focus on now is applying everything that we've learned. Now, before we can do that, though, I need to just talk about and introduce you to the structure of this 4-step plan. You need to know exactly how we're going to do this. So that's the purpose of this session, session 6, is to introduce you to those 4 steps that we're going to use to create unstoppable endurance. So a couple learning objectives. First and foremost, I want to introduce you to the worksheets that we're going to be working with for the next couple sessions. And after that, I want to introduce you to the 4 steps that we're going to be using to create unstoppable endurance. So here's the outline. This is what we're going to cover in this video lecture. First, we're going to introduce you to the worksheets, and then we're going to cover steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. Steps 1 is scheduling the big training phases. Step 2 is forecasting training volume and intensity. Step 3 is planning training subphases and training weeks. Step 4 is programming the training session. Then we're going to have a summary. Now remember, we're not doing these. This isn't a workshop. I'm just giving you an overview of all the different steps so you know exactly what to expect. So the first thing that I want to do is just introduce you to the worksheets that we're going to be using. Now, I just want to direct your attention to the download section. In that download section, you're going to be able to download 2 different documents. One, it's an Excel sheet. It's called Fight Plan Template. And the other one, it's a Word document, and it's also called Fight Plan Template. So let me just bring these up and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here's the Word document. So what this is we have a whole bunch of different factors over here on the left side. We have information about your fight schedule, your training cycles, and I'm going to go over these in more detail in a second. And we have information about performance factors. You don't need to know what these are right now. I just want to introduce you to the structure of the document. And then we have all this information on the right-hand side of this space to actually program your periodized training plan that's individualized to you. So in the Word document, it's just a template. So I've created a couple different pages. There's enough pages here to do at least a 12-month plan. So if you're old-fashioned, if you like to work with pencils and papers, and sometimes I like to work with pencils and papers as well, then this is for you. So what you should do is download this document. If, on the other hand, you are a little more computer savvy, then I'm going to recommend that you download the Excel document. And that's what we're looking at right now. So the difference is, rather than downloading it and printing it off and using a pencil to write everything, then you're going to be just using everything in Excel. You're going to be creating lines. You're going to be typing in information in Excel. Now the nice thing about this is it's pretty condensed. And the way I've set it up is we still have all those performance factors, training cycles, and fight schedule, all that information on the left-hand side, except now you can scroll across and you can type the information in as you go along. And again, there's enough room here for a 12-month plan. So I'm going to be working with Excel because it's pretty easy to use for me, but it's up to you. So I want you to pause the video right now and download either the Excel worksheet or the Word document. And if you download the Word document, make sure you print it off and get a pencil and come on back, because we're going to be going through this stuff and I'm going to be introducing you to all the key concepts and everything on the left here. So pause the video now, go and get that stuff, and then turn me back on when you're ready to go. Okay, I'm going to assume that you're ready to go, so I'm going to start reviewing everything on this left-hand side. So at the very top, we're looking at information about our fight schedule. So this is your fight schedule. We're going to see information on the location. You can type in or write in this segment. There's going to be the date, of course, of your fight. There's going to be information on the calendar month and the calendar week. So you're going to input all this information as it relates to your fight from now until then. So this is pretty important information. It's the big picture stuff, and it helps us detail our training and training cycles later on. So that moves us on to the training cycle section, and the big phases here, this is the first thing that we focus on, and we're going to write the big training phases in here. If you remember, that's the general prep phase, that's the fight specific phase, that's the fight camp, the taper, the transition. We're going to write all that stuff in here. And then the next thing that you're going to see is information about training volume and training intensity. And these things can range from, I put about 10% all the way up to 100%. And we're going to draw the lines in that correspond to the training volume and intensity and how it's going to fluctuate over the course of our plan. And then we drill down from the big training phases down into training sub-phases, training weeks, and even the training day. And all that information is going to go right across here. Training weeks right across here, training days, and you can see this is even broken down into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday even. And then below this, we have the difficulty of training, which is going to be scheduled on a weekly and daily basis. And the difficulty of training can range from no training, because you got to have days off every once in a while, to low training difficulty, medium, high, and very high training difficulty. So this is the information that I'm going to be, or this is where the information is going to go. Don't worry, I know this probably sounds a little bit confusing, but this is your first glimpse at the worksheet, and we're going to take you through that step-by-step process later on. Everything is going to become very, very clear with regards to these periodization factors, the training cycle information. And then at the bottom here we have performance factors. These are all the performance factors that influence your performance in the cage. So you're going to have things like your resistance training, which includes strength and endurance and power development. When I say endurance, I'm talking about muscular endurance and muscular strength and muscular power. So you'll focus on those objectives in this section. But remember, the purpose of this video, it's not to design a resistance training program. There's other courses for that. The purpose of this video series is to help you develop unstoppable endurance. So you can see that performance factor is going to be dealt with here. So I'm going to be helping you fill in this row right here. But these are all the performance factors that can be periodized across your fight plan. But just as a reminder, we're going to be working exclusively with endurance training. So I hope this gives you a good understanding of all the things that we're going to be filling in, all the different performance factors. It may sound a little bit confusing right now, but don't worry, we're going to work our way through it together. So let's go back to that presentation. So I hope now you have a good understanding of the worksheets. What I want to do now is just talk about the different steps that I'm going to take you through. There's 4 different steps. So the first thing that we're going to do when we get to that, and this is going to be session 7, we focus on step 1. We're going to focus on the big picture stuff. We're going to start to plan your transition, which is around 3 weeks, your taper, your fight camp, it's 8 weeks before that. And then we schedule the fight-specific preparatory phase. Now the length of the fight-specific prep phase, it depends upon where you're at in your training. If you need to develop a lot of aerobic endurance, if that's your weak area, then you need to include a general prep phase. But if you're advanced, if you have good aerobic endurance and you're really just looking to optimize your performance and focus on all other energy systems, you probably don't need to have as long or a general prep phase at all. So let's have a look at a little example here. And so here's the example of the 6-month plan. And remember here, the big focus is to create these fight schedule components and make them match up with the big training phases. That's what we're going to do in this session. So here you can see the general prep phase followed by the fight specific prep, the fight camp, the taper, and the transition. Now in the 6-month plan, this is more of an intermediate to beginner plan because it dedicates more time to this general prep phase. It's also dedicated to maybe advanced fighters who didn't spend the time to create their ideal endurance. So that's what we're going to focus in step 1, which is session 7, the big picture stuff, making sure that these big phases match up with your calendar. After that, we move on to step 2, which is all about forecasting training volume and training intensity. So you can see here, we schedule these things, training intensity in red, training volume in blue, over your whole fight plan, across the general prep phase, the fight specific phase, the fight camp, the taper, and the transition. And it seems to have these random moments when the curve changes, but they're not so random. And the whole purpose of this session, step 2, session 8, it's to tell you the justification for all of these curves, why I've made them bend where. Now, this is kind of where the art comes in, but I'm trying to back it up by science. It's really up to you to create your own individualized training plan, the way that that makes sense to you. I'm just here to advise you. So here's the example of the 6-month plan, and again what we're focusing on here is inputting training volume and training intensity over the long run over all these different phases, and you can see here how it is manipulated over time, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. After we've moved through step 2, that's session 8, we move on to session 9, and that's when we focus on planning these sub-phases and training weeks. So you're going to have a document that's going to have the transition, taper, fight camp, the fight-specific prep phase, and maybe the general prep phase scheduled. And then we're going to start to go into each one of those phases and schedule those sub-phases. And you don't know about this yet. You don't know that there are shock phases. You don't know that there are developmental phases. You don't know what those are. You don't know that there are peaking weeks or transition weeks. So we're going to introduce you to some concepts in this step 3, session 9 lecture. So that's going to be an important one. Everything's going to be a whole lot clearer when we get into that. And so here's the example of the 6-month plan, and what we're looking at, it's getting a little bit smaller to see here, but we're looking at training sub-phases, training weeks, and training days, and you can follow along. What you're going to notice here is again, we have these sub-phases that we haven't introduced you to yet. The developmental sub-phases, we got shock sub-phases, we got taper sub-phases, and transition sub-phases. And then we have these associated training weeks. We're going to introduce you to those in step 3, session 9. And that's not the only thing, is we're going to go on and we're going to program the difficulty of training weeks. You can see that here in the black line, which stretches across your entire 6-month plan. So that's the purpose of session 9, step 3, is to drill down from the big phases and focus in on the training months and the training weeks. And so now that you've scheduled the big training phases, you made it match up with your calendar schedule and your fight, then you scheduled the sub phases, you schedule the training weeks, you have the training difficulty set. Now it's time to actually get into the nitty-gritty and start programming the training session. So what you're looking at here, this is the training log template, which you can also download. Let me just bring that up so you can see exactly what we're talking about. So here's, again, it's a Word document, it's the training log. And so the information you're going to be putting here when you train is, it could be an AM session right here, or it could be a PM session. And the type of information you're including is the phase that you're training in, whether it's the general prep, if that's applicable, or the fight-specific prep, or maybe it's the fight camp you're in, or the taper or the transition. Either way, you're putting that here. And then you're going to identify the sub-phase. Maybe it's a developmental, shock, or recovery week. Again, I'm going to give you a full definition and help you with all of those sub-phases. Same with the training weeks. You're going to put in the training day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the intended difficulty of the training session. You're going to put your training objectives, which I'm going to help you iron out. I'm going to talk about that more about that in a second. I'm going to give you the warm-up that you should use. I'm going to give you the main body of the workout. I'm going to give you the cool downs, and then we're going to program all this stuff, and then you're going to fill in general comments if you have any. Other information that's available here, we've showed you these before. We want to make sure that you're not overtraining, so you have to monitor the signs and symptoms of overtraining in the areas of nutrition, your physical body, and your health, so you can fill this out on each day that you train. And then just as a reminder, here are the overtraining signs and symptoms. So again, this is the training log, which you can download again here, but we've covered this a little while ago. Let's get back to that presentation. So here's just an example. This is what we want to get to. Is everything we want to fill everything out, and you want to know exactly what you're going to be doing, and that's what we're going to be telling you. Now, just as a little reminder here, this is all step 4. This is going to be the final session, session 10, and we're going to be programming individual workouts. And this is just a review of how we program individual workouts. If you have a general prep phase, then in that we know we're going to be targeting mostly the aerobic energy systems, and we have a whole bunch of workouts that we're going to select from. I'm going to hand pick them with you, and we're going to slot those into the appropriate sections. If you're focusing on other fight plans, and maybe you're starting with the fight-specific prep phase, and maybe you're just focusing on aerobic glycolysis, and then as you move closer to the fight camp, you start to focus again, still on aerobic glycolysis, but you start to incorporate more ATP PCR training sessions. So this is the rationale. This is how we structure your workouts. Let me just give you a little example, actually, so you can see how we build these things in. So this is an example of, let's move over to a fight-specific. So here's an example of a fight-specific preparatory phase, and this is what we're going to show you exactly how to do. So you can see here there's workouts. In this case, let me roll over that again. This workout here, it's 6 to 7 times, 60 seconds on, 4 minutes off with a 1 minute build up, and it's MMA specific activity because they're in the fight specific preparatory phase. So this is what we're going to show you exactly how to do. We're going to get really detailed. So by the end of this, you should have all of your workouts chosen. So let's go back to that PowerPoint presentation. So let's give you a little summary here of everything that we've talked about so far. Remember, the first thing that I wanted to do, the big objective here, was to introduce you to those worksheets. So now you should have an understanding of the worksheets. You should have downloaded them. You should know what we're going to use them for. The next thing that we talked about was understanding the 4 steps to creating unstoppable endurance. This is what we're going to be working through in sessions 7, 8, 9, and 10. Session 7, we're going to cover step 1. That's when we schedule the big training phases. Session 8, or step 2, that's when we're going to forecast training volume and intensity across your entire fight plan. It's going to be individualized to you and your fight schedule. Step 3, session 9, that's when we're going to be planning training subphases and training weeks. And finally, step 4, which is covered in session 10, the last session, that's when we really drill in, like we were just talking about, to those individual workouts. We tell you exactly what to do, the warm-up, the body of the workout, the cool down, you get it all. So I hope that you're excited, I hope that you're ready to go, and I look forward to working with you to create your own plan for developing unstoppable endurance. We'll see you in the next session.